Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of the Instrumentalist Artist Spotlights for the SOFA series, which is our ongoing bi weekly artist fundraiser events. Today, with me, we have Brendan Nguyen.
Hello,
Hello.
it's me.
It's you. Let's not pretend that we don't know each other, just so everybody knows he and I are Project Blank.
Yes.
By the way.
Yes, yeah.
It is.
You're the project and then I'm the blank. Yeah.
Good. I was about to ask which one of us is which. All right. So, Brendan Wen, tell us.
Yes.
So I am the proxy for the audience at large. So tell us,
Okay.
the royal we, tell us,
hmm
who are you? Where do you get off? And who do you think you are? Just kidding. Tell me.
That was a lot.
Just tell us where you're from and where are you now and how did you come to San Diego?
Well, I hail from Seattle, Washington, specifically the east side of the lake, east side. And I'm now in San Diego, living my beautiful sunny life. And
From
how did
inside,
I
safely
from
inside.
yeah, yeah, basically inside, yeah. Yeah. What else? Oh my
What
gosh.
brought you here?
Here, what brought me here? To San Diego or to
Hmm.
this interview? Um,
Both.
okay. Well, uh, I was actually, oh my gosh. Yeah, I was in a bad place. I wasn't a musician for some time. And then I decided one day that that is who I am. And then I got into UCSD.
What?
And then I was there for like the better part of, I don't want to count how many years, but it was like
Forever.
a decade. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finished my degrees there and decided that San Diego was worth, you know, staying for.
That I think is an important thing because I don't know. I think we've definitely talked about this before, but let's just hash it out again. That I think that when musicians come to UCSD, and for those who don't know, UCSD is an amazing institution geared towards those of us who work with composers, those of us who are composers, and people who do contemporary works in like the classical music tradition. And sometimes not, but mostly we're all kind of conservatory people who are wound up here. And I don't know. I always kind of I was always felt that San Diego didn't have as much as I wanted it to have, right? You know, we can go to UCSD and get our contemporary music fix. We can go to the symphony and get our symphony fix, but it's like
Yeah.
very rarely the twain shall meet. I think recently Steve Schick has been conducting some for the symphony, but that's only a recent development. So it's like
Yeah.
when we're here, we're kind of like we come here, we escape to paradise for a little bit, and then we go. We go to the bigger cities. We go to New York. You go to LA. Go to Berlin. You go. You don't. Nobody ever stays. And so, why? Yeah, why did you stay?
Well, I mean, like, yeah, frankly, like, when I came here, I think it was 2008. Whoa.
12
Yeah,
years.
it wasn't, I don't know, I didn't, it wasn't very appealing at first.
Yeah.
I like desperately wanted to live, actually for some time I lived in LA while I was kind of commuting down here.
Yeah.
But I think we watched the city grow and develop like
Hmm.
while we were here. And lots of other like little institutions kind of popped up. I can't name them. Maybe we should tag them as soon as this is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Athenaeum. There's all these like Art of Alad. There's a lot of really great things happening that have popped up in the last decade. And
I think to be clear, the
yeah,
Athenaeum has been around. That
I know.
one's that one
Whatever.
predates us. Yeah.
What is the series that? Anyway,
Well,
there's
their
a
new
series
music
in it,
series,
right?
yeah, they've
Yeah.
had one
Oh, that's
for
been around. Oh
yeah.
God, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know that. I didn't study the
Edit.
San Diego. I know, right?
You need to do your research.
I know, right? Yeah, but watching the city grow and develop, and like all of a sudden there were really good restaurants popping up everywhere,
Hmm.
and I felt like San Diego's culture was, I wanted to be part of that growth, There's a lot of potential here.
And it's just nice here.
And also the weather. I mean, yeah, I spent my life in rainy climates
Yeah.
all over the world until I came here and I was like, oh, right, I need sun to be happy.
Yeah, no offense, East Coast, but man, I was sad. Saddest years
Yeah,
of my life.
yeah,
And that's saying something.
yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit. I think I've been asking, Todd and Jonathan Nussman in the previous series why you came or how you came to contemporary music, and was it something that was nurtured early on by your advisors and your teachers at undergrad? Because you went to Oberlin. Let's name drop a
Yeah,
little bit.
right.
That's a frou-frou-shishi
Yeah.
conservatory. It's nothing to sneeze at. So how did you make your way into contemporary practice?
I think as a teenager, practicing hours and hours a day before I went to Oberlin, while I was only playing, conventional repertoire at the time, I actually don't think I even knew that. I didn't know the different various languages of new music that had come
Mm-hmm.
up after World War II, and but I would frequently do like free improvisation when I didn't want to you know, hammer notes into my head.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it was just like I wouldn't play. I just kind of smashed the keyboard, and my parents didn't like it. But there was something about it that uh, felt really freeing to me, and I kind of connected to those sounds. And so when I was at Oberlin, I practiced my ass off, and I early on I got to conquer these big pieces that these that I had wanted to play since I was a little kid. And after that, I uh, needed another challenge. And so Oberlin is just an amazing place to discover, new music. And I
Mm-hmm.
made a lot of friends who were very much in that world, and they introduced me to Xenakis and Barrio and all those lovely people. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the first music piece I ever played was the Barrio sequenza, and I came in really really blind. I didn't realize
But
that
you're
it was.
also coming in pretty hard, B. Like,
Yeah, I know. No one told me it was like ridiculously hard, so I kind of came in really naive, and so I was just like learning notes like it was any other piece, and
great. Yeah.
working on those like tempo changes that are like crazy, and I memorized it, and I felt really connected to it, gesturally and emotionally. It just fit so many parts of my musicianship and personality. And yeah, that's kind of what set it off. And then I realized like I could work with living composers and you could collaborate on
Right.
writing pieces. And I mean, I can't do that with Beethoven because he's dead.
He's like super dead.
But I know.
He's so dead.
Yeah, that was so sad. Yeah.
He's way dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Did you ever feel, I don't know, that, do you as a pianist ever feel like burdened by the sort of legacy pieces? Like there's, the all the Beethoven sonata books, right? That
Yeah.
there's a way that they are performed, and if you don't get at the language in this specific way, then you're doing it wrong.
Hmm.
Do you ever feel that, or is that maybe not like part of your world?
I'd say that very thing contributed to my first only major mental breakdown.
Mm,
And yeah, that wasn't fun. I couldn't really play without hearing like the voices of every teacher I've ever had, you know, telling me that I wasn't doing this or that correctly. It's not like they were like that, but we're trained to be extraordinarily self-critical in
right,
order to get better at what we do.
right.
Um, but I mean, the thing that has saved me is uh, this kind of came from working with living composers. Is that I learned that the old greats they were human too, and
Mm-hmm.
they are not gods. And I think that a lot lot of them would balk at the idea that their music ought to be played in a very specific way.
One more time for the back of the room, please. If you could say that again, they are not gods. Is that
They
right?
are
Is
not
that what you
gods.
said?
Yeah, right. They are not
Mm-hmm.
gods. Mozart
Mm-hmm.
wrote a piece about ass licking. Yeah, like literally, I can't remember what it's
Oh
called,
yeah,
but
it's
it
what is
happened.
it? Arschlecker? Is that right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He's cool, right? He's their buddy.
He's our
Yeah,
homie.
yeah, yeah. It's just we
Yeah.
revere them, but
Yeah, I mean, we have to strike that balance, right? It's like,
yeah,
sure, these composers, their contributions to sort of to their own cultural like thumbprint at that very specific time of their life,
mhm.
and the legacy beyond that is certainly important. And I'm not saying that Beethoven was just like some schmo, that just before y'all come for me. He's amazing. He's great, amazing. But
Yeah.
but I
My
think
favorite.
that
Yeah,
yeah, right. That
yeah,
but I think that yeah, like that feeling like that there is a right and a wrong way with every single note on the page is so it's just for me it was too much. It was just too much
yeah,
as a kid in
mhm,
undergrad. I'm just a baby and I'm like handed all of these Mozart arias and I don't get it. I don't get any of it.
yeah.
But I'm just like, here
Right.
you go.
Yeah.
Okay, and being told that it's not quite there yet. It's not quite there yet. Okay, just a couple more years, honey. It's not quite there yet. And it's like, well, then what can I do? What else is
Yeah.
there, you know? Do you find
Yeah.
that do
Yeah.
you find that in your work in contemporary music and kind of exploring a wider palette to paint with, do you think that has informed your repertoire playing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, playing things that have never been heard before taught me a lot about the process of really kind of creating a piece of music and not trying to conform to an idea. And that by itself allowed me to tackle, traditional repertoire in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't really think. I mean, amazing pianists are a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need anybody, playing things in whatever proper means. Like I'm not going to do that. I don't really care for it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the style and all that stuff, but I want to get at my my version, the Brendan Nguyen version of whatever piece I play. But yeah, it certainly informs me because my relationship to the score is a lot different now,
Mm-hmm.
um, in a intangible way. But yeah,
Wait, go more on that. What do you mean your relationship to the score? So, yeah.
I see it as like a living document. It's not like a stone tablet or
Mm-hmm.
anything. And that these markings, of course, we study kind of like a portato during the classical era is we play it differently than it would be like written in the Romantic era. There's things like that we have to know, um, but I don't see those markings as like I guess I I see them as like editable.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I have discourse with the composers that I work with, there's always this back and forth of like what works and what doesn't. Like I don't want to play this note with my forehead or that kind of thing. And I kind of have like now I have like similar negotiations when I play uh, standard rep.
Right. A
Yeah,
standard, I mean, looking at a piece of music, it's like you, the performer, you're not the executor of the will, you're not there to just
yeah,
follow the instructions.
yeah,
Otherwise, why do it? Anybody could do that,
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but it is true, exactly true, that it
yeah,
is a living document and it has to be alive through each new player that tackles it. And
yeah,
sure, the dots need to kind of happen at the right time on the grid.
yeah,
But yeah, it needs to breathe.
yeah.
It needs to be your mode of expression.
Yeah, right. And I no longer try to play standard repertoire in a way that fits in with what uh, the way it should sound or whatever that means. But I play it in such a way that it feels new as I play it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
What are the, I guess, what are the, mentioned, so when you went to undergrad, you had like tackled your big pieces, like some of the hardest piano
Hmm.
repertoire. What were those pieces and why were they such
Oh
like
my
little carrots
gosh.
for you?
Um, I like making my life difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, let's see, like the Brahms Paganini variations.
Hmm.
That was a hoot.
What is it about
Against the
that
study
piece?
with like, oh, it's like fast parallel six in both hands. Is
No big deal.
takes a lot of just things, But yeah, I mean, it's there's a bit of a um, like a piano jock in me,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of pianists kind of have that. But yeah, I mean, I tackled like Gaspard de la Nuit Ravel, for instance, uh, much earlier than I thought I would ever be capable of doing. But my coach assured me that I was ready for such a thing, and stretching myself in that way just it made me a lot better. But yeah, a lot of practice, and I always like to be challenged.
Talk to me about your practicing regimen, because I don't I think singers go about it a little differently. I mean, there's definitely like a kernel of self abuse and like like that was wrong, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
Yeah,
but we definitely don't sit down for like 6 hours at a time.
yeah. Well, you can't. You feed the horse.
My
And
poor voice.
yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Uh, I mean, I think self-flagellation is an essential part of being a musician at some point. It's hard. It's a very difficult thing
Yeah.
to do. We have to spend, you have to spend so many hours, so many months and years to sound like okay, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you get to that place, and then you realize that uh, there are amateur musicians who just sound incredible, who like probably deserve to be like on a tour.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of like competition, and so that's always in the back of your mind that like if you're not practicing, you're not getting better, and you should feel bad. But yeah, but I don't have that like anymore. These days, practicing is just like it's a very it's just a I'm sitting there crafting, really. My current practicing habits are like little, they're healthier. Like
Mm-hmm.
I take my breaks. I'm strategic about the breaks. I know not to hit my head against the wall if something's not going well. I just do what I was always told as a young kid, just slow down, you know, just
Oh
slow
my
down for a little bit. Yeah,
God,
I know it's
slow
weird.
down.
Yeah, like, but I know I used to. There were weeks during my conservatory days where I would practice like 10 hours a day, like,
That's so
and I
crazy.
forget to eat. Um, you know, you get in this state of flow, and all of a sudden you're just like kind of cranking out music, and
Yeah.
yeah. But now, I mean, you learn a lot about your process. Hopefully, one does, and so I mean, I can get more done in like a few days than I could in a whole month back then.
Right, right, exactly. It just sort of
Right.
becomes much more efficient, you know.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so you set your, like, I don't know, I kind of set certain benchmarks. I don't even, in a single practice session, I will probably not go through more than maybe a page, you know,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
however long it takes is however long it takes, you know. And I just
Yeah.
sort of look at one measure, little pitch relationships. I work through
Hmm.
just the technique. I'll put it, you know, it's just like, I don't think people quite realize that, of course, it's just a bunch of dots. It's just a bunch of notes on a page.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of figure out how that feels in the body. But there's like, you know,
Yeah.
there's more bricks to this
I
building.
know, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
sort of
Totally.
compartmentalize that in your own approach to practice? So you're just like, okay, I need to drill to drill the order of things, like what fingers need to go where really slowly, then slowly speed it up, and then you put an expression, or is this all sort of like, you know, um,
Yeah.
mixed
For
together?
for pieces that are like particularly challenging, I'm pretty strategic in that way. Luckily these days, there's always like large swaths of a piece that like memorize really quickly or that I don't have to spend that much time practicing. But yeah, I try to target, there's always one part in every piece that, um, gives me quite the headache. So, I just start with that. Back in when I was younger, that would be the part I avoid, and then I would suffer during performance. But now it's like I'll take care of that
That's, yeah.
first, and the rest will follow.
Yeah. How did you, so in your graduate studies at UCSD, you started to kind of explore more of a creative practice, more than just taking on a new piece of repertoire, a new piece with a composer. How did you get into that practice? And tell us a little bit about Seven Tragedies of Space Travel.
Oh, okay. We're gonna go right for
We're
that,
gonna.
huh?
It's a good piece.
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned earlier, I'd gone through some very deep internal struggles before I came to UCSD, and I saw this as an opportunity for me to kind of figure out what kind of musician or person I wanted to be, because clearly the old way was problematic, to say the least. And so, one thing that I was given at UCSD was freedom. Alec Karras, my coach for 8 years, who I absolutely love. Hi, Alec.
Shout
You
out
better
to
be
Alec
watching this.
Karras. Woo!
He just like supported everything I did. I mean, I would play music he did. I don't think he liked Sharino at all, and that's like all I played for a year. But he coached me on it. He always had something really intelligent and insightful to say about it. And
Good for him.
and then when I started talking crazy, like I wanted to, do a project that involved like 8 projectors, he was just like, sure, that's awesome, and would engage me on that level. And of course, I'm referencing this piano opera is what I called it, the Seven Tragedies of Space Travel, which we are reprising at Project Blank in a couple of years. Oh, should I not have said that?
No, you can say that.
Okay, cool.
No, we're doing it again. It's really good.
We're doing it again. But yeah, that was like, I had always had these kind of these ideas that were unusual to a typical piano concert, and like it was just a lot of like pent up creative energy, and it came out as like this like massive takeover of the Conrad Previs Music Center. I think it was the concert hall and the Black Box Theater and like the orchestra rehearsal room, like the entire like downstairs wing of the performance area. Yeah, exactly. And somehow I was allowed to do that. I don't think the administration thought anybody would do that. So I don't know.
I just ask. It never hurts to ask. Can I do that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly. Yeah,
Sure.
I'll do it, and then shoot first.
Yeah, ask questions, ask forgiveness later.
Yeah, but I wrote this. In a day, I wrote this whole idea that ultimately is centered around my relationship to like my identity as a Vietnamese American, born here in the States, but born into a family of war refugees, and to grow up hearing their stories and to see how strong they are. I couldn't tell if like am I that strong? Like, could I have dealt with that? Am I just like a really lucky, privileged person to be here? And am I a lesser person for that? Am I like, there's a lot of questions about that. So it was like, my relationship to that. Also like, shame that I felt growing up for just being a minority. That's kind of something that, minorities kind of grapple with. Like, oh my gosh, here's all these, I don't look like anybody else around me. Like, do I actually fit in? Like, who am I? And so there's a project that was like supposed to deal with that. I don't know if I got any answers to that myself, but also to honor my family too. And so, yeah, basically the idea was that these outer space aliens come to Conrad Krebs Music Center, and they loosely represent my mom and my two sisters, and they come in as the enslavers of humanity, and they treated the audience like cattle and brought them from the different spaces that I had commandeered. And yeah, an amazing creative team. The day that I wrote it, I contacted like, God, there was like must have been 7 people, composers, like experimental artists, video artists, technology people, coders. This she's a singer, like Leslie.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
she's
yeah.
no one.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just kind of, it was just really nuts. I had like 3 pieces commissioned for it. Aaron Helgeson, Clint McCallum, and Nick Deo. They wrote incredible pieces. And yeah, yeah.
And I like the 3 of them kind of explored really interesting takes on, I think, your own relationship with the piano. If I may sort of like provide you some clarity, as the outsider who helped but was not part of, not in the shit with you. But I think that like, so Helgeson wrote this like beautiful sort of meditation, right? It was this lush and sort of spaced out, like just beautiful stuff, like pretty, capital P, pretty. Not without its complications and not without its difficulties, but it was just like this, like, oh, this is so nice. And then and then Nick Deo's piece, I thought, kind of starts there. Is Nick Deo, who is this amazing giant Viking, and he's like this formidable figure. He looks like he's gonna rip your head off, but he's the biggest pussycat in the world.
Yeah.
And he writes such sensitive, exquisite, gorgeous stuff. Like he loves writing music, and he loves beautiful things. But it started to kind of deteriorate, and not deteriorate, but to sort of like shift into kind of anger. At the end, that you're just like, it goes from this spacey, like, cloud, insane melody. It was so beautiful, and then you get angry and you start kind of literally attacking the piano, and then it ends again. You walk away from it with this like this like beautiful little coda at the end that is just like,
yeah, the Schubert quotation from the B flat sonata. Yeah.
And
yeah,
then
like,
and then McCallum
yes.
was invasive, and he like, just to describe the piece, he put guitar pickups on all 88 of the strings for all of the 88 keys, so each sound could be processed from every key, and it looked like an alien figure. So it has all these like wires and cords and cables.
It's gross looking. It's awesome.
A big old mess of stuff. And then that one was just like invaded. You invade the piano and rip it apart and make it not sound like a piano anymore. So it was this like amazing thing of like your sort of like from order to chaos in your own relationship to piano playing. So that's what your piece meant. You should put that on your website. Just kidding.
I don't know what I just said, but yeah.
Great. And then there's also talk about, so you used your mother's voice.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
Really, really, really beautiful way. That was terrifying and very nurturing in the same way that it just, yeah. So how did you use her voice?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny process because I'm a terrible Vietnamese person. I barely speak, and I certainly don't read it. Yeah. Sorry, Mom. But obviously, it was important that the Vietnamese aliens would speak Vietnamese, and so I wrote all the text in English, obviously, and then I had somebody translate it. and then I handed it to my mom, and then she came back at me and she was like, "Okay, like none of this makes sense." And I was like, I know that's it's it's a little weird, you know. I was just like, run with it, okay. Yeah, and you know, my parents have an incredible karaoke setup and really nice microphones. It's a very Vietnamese thing.
Good
And so
Vietnamese.
yeah, so they were able to record a very high quality recording, and then sent it to uh, Joe Murillo, the brilliant Joe Murillo, who manipulated the voice to sound uh, like a scary alien. But actually, what was interesting is that my mom's original recording, like by itself, was so haunting. Like anyway.
Chào loài người, chúng tôi đã đến. Người trai trẻ này, kỳ lạ, anh ta giống mình. Anh ta là người đầu tiên chúng tôi tìm thấy chỉ 1 giờ trước đây khi chúng tôi đến. Chúng tôi băn khoăn về khẩu súng đó. Chúng tôi băn khoăn nó có ý nghĩa gì, phải không anh bạn? Chúng tôi nghĩ là chúng tôi biết. Chúng tôi đã vượt hàng tỷ năm ánh sáng để tìm thấy khẩu súng đó. Và chúng tôi sẽ lấy nó. Nhưng chuyện đó đủ rồi cho lúc này. Chúng tôi muốn mời bạn đến con tàu vũ trụ của chúng tôi. Nó không xa, nhưng trước tiên chúng tôi muốn anh được no đủ khi lên tàu. Đến đây, theo chúng tôi, theo chúng tôi. Ánh đèn, theo ánh đèn đến đây.
But yeah, so yeah, it was a trip.
And how did you intersperse her voice through the show?
Yeah, so yeah, she was sort of like, I don't know, in a sense, taking the opera theme. Like the pieces were like my arias, you know? And in my mom's voice that was like the no shit, what do you call them?
Like Greek chorus? No.
Right, no, like the thing that moves the plot along in an opera.
Of the plot device?
The plot device.
The story?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, the story. Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
recitative.
yeah,
You mean recitative.
Right, recitative, yeah.
I'm a bad opera singer.
Oh my god. Let's cut that. Okay. So yeah, that was kind of the function of yeah, she's just like transitioning between the pieces, but also pushing this kind of menacing story. Yeah, and and then I had like the aliens who were dressed in the traditional Vietnamese long dress. It's called áo dài. But that's where Leslie comes in as the costume designer. So we came up with this idea where we take that silhouette and make it like really futuristic. And so what was the material?
I mean, it was just vinyl.
Like it's like white, like vinyl.
Yeah, opalescent white vinyl gown, and then we covered their faces with organza, and all of their heads were similar, and they were androgynous, like two women, and one was a male. But
yeah, it was Todd Mullenberg. Yeah,
Todd Mullenberg.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's the most slender of the bunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, that was just and the public shall see it in a couple of years during our sci-fi season.
I'll include some photos of the production so people can get an idea what we're talking about. We're just describing blindly.
Also,
use your imagination.
It was my harpsichord debut.
Right. You worked with Takai?
Yeah, the great Kai Nishi
so good.
Taught me so much. I fell in love with the harpsichord because of her. So
yeah, it has a wider range of expression than I think people may realize.
Yeah,
it can be really violent and raucous and very delicate, and it's an amazing instrument. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Amazing. So what are you working on now? Like you chose a Schubert for your offering to the Sofa series. We thank you. Mm-hmm. So why are you coming back to Schubert, and why did you choose this particular piece?
Yeah, well, I've never left Schubert.
Right.
Let's be clear. Yeah, I mean, I've always, I mean, what's not to love, you know? I think I've never played any of the sort of like really like popular Schubert works. I mean, I played the B flat sonata, but that's not something that like a regular person would just sit down and listen to, you know. But like the G flat impromptu makes everybody weep, you know. It's like the perfect length, and you know, every time any of my students have played it for a studio class, like literally everybody else is like, I want to play that, and I have to tell them like, you're not ready, or like I can't coach everybody, but
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, it's you know, and right now I, you know, sometimes when we do like a lot of new music, it takes a lot out of you. You know, sometimes that music explores parts of your musical expression that are really difficult and challenging in a lot of ways. Like sometimes it's just like a piece would have like straight up like full force aggression for like 20 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
And to practice something like that is, you know, it's taxing. And so it's important for me to like vacillate between like that stuff and every now and then just kind of like indulge in some schmaltz and yeah, and yeah. That's also
Why is this
a big part of
schmaltz
me.
though? Is Schubert schmaltz?
No, I mean,
I
it's
don't
like
know. People
very,
are
very
gonna.
refined schmaltz. You know what? Um, yeah, there's something, yeah, there's something just eternally gorgeous about Schubert. I feel like I can sit back and just sing through Schubert. And it's, you know, yeah, like, you know, pianists spend a lot of time like working on our bel canto sound. That's like it's essential when you're playing Chopin or whatever. And I don't always get to like use that. And sometimes like I just need to access that, you know, that crooning part of myself.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, a bel canto is Italian. It literally means beautiful singing, but it is a style of composition in the early 19th century. I almost said early 1900s. No, no, 1800s, 19th century.
Yes.
That is just, it's just lush, it's rich, it's full of texture, it's full of timbre, and the sort of like quality of the sound that feels just a little bit more, I don't know, it has more depth to it. Not saying that like Purcell and Bach are not deep. It's just in a different way. There's like a wider range of like expressivity to it. But I like that. I like that instrumentalists are kind of evoking singing in their playing. That not necessarily like you're trying to mimic the human voice. That's not what you do. But it is that you're thinking about these long lines in terms of where does the breath go, and
Yeah.
where's the high note, what kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
physicality do I need to get to that peak of the phrase. And
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, but I would say actually that we do try to mimic the human voice, especially you know, Chopin writes in some of his score literally like bel canto, right?
Yeah.
And I try to like, you know, feel that, you know, like in my larynx as I'm playing a melody, and you know, feel the pain of like a high note or something. But
They
yeah,
feel
I
so
try to
good
access that.
sometimes that you black out.
Oh, really?
Just so you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels real good. Actually, a
Yeah.
lot of times it feels real good.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah.
maybe you need a few voice lessons, is what you're
I
saying.
do. Yeah. No, nobody needs to hear me sing. No, not gonna happen.
Never, never. Oh man. So what else are you looking at these days? Or is Schubert like your happy place, or are you thinking of like
Schubert is my
as
happy place. Yeah,
yeah?
I've actually been like start reading like my like my Schubert book, like with all the moment musical and all. You know, it's really relaxing. And actually, I feel like I'm a good sight reader when I play Schubert. Because I'm generally not, but it's nice. Like if I'm trying to sight read Beethoven, like that, I just can't.
So many moving parts.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so Schubert's kind of a go-to. If I'm having a bad day, which lately it's been challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think Schubert is my go-to as well. Not that you asked, but but I'm just saying so because it's like I feel like so when I was a baby singer, 18 years old, right into college, you get handed your first Mozart, your first Schubert, your first and while I could tell that it's a pretty song, I didn't quite get it. I didn't
hmm
quite understand the range of expression in it, and not even just in the vocal line. It is in the piano writing of the songs that
Oh yeah,
Schubert
yeah,
is like rich. It is just this
yeah.
wonderful decadent thing,
hmm Yeah,
that it just has so many colors. It explores so many different like literal elements like water and wind and earth, and
yeah.
you can feel the,
hmm
the the ground turning to snow. It's just like
Yeah,
it's so painterly and so rich and so expressive that I just didn't get it. And it wasn't until I
yeah.
think we worked on our duo concert,
Running is on. Yeah.
yeah, a few years ago.
hmm
I had only ever sung like the Schubert hits. There's a few songs that everybody has to sing as an undergrad
hmm
apparently.
Yeah.
But I had never ever looked at any of the cycle Schwanengesang, which is like it has some dark turns, and it just goes into these little
hmm
these little
Yeah.
hallways that you just don't expect. Like
Yeah.
how did we get
Right.
here? Was this
Yeah.
prepared in the chord changes before? Like it's just
Right.
so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's like
just
almost like experimental in some ways.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
wild.
right. It's like
Yeah.
I'm like
hmm
fumbling through my own, like how did that work? And now, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I find it like
Right.
beyond clever, and it's just it's doing it
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
in a way that
Right.
nothing else is doing it for me these days.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And he does it with like so few notes too. Like it's so contained and
Yeah,
yeah, and judicious in its use of sound, yet it just kind of evokes like all these things.
so many things, so many
So
things,
many.
all the things. Well, Brendan, my dear, I
Yeah.
love you.
That is
My work husband, my life
likewise.
partner. Thank you so much for
Yep.
taking the time to talk to me, to talk to our audience, to share what is in your heart during during these dark times. And thank you for playing some Schubert for the Sofa series. And yeah, so thank you for joining us. I've enjoyed every minute of this.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
Bye.
Bye.